just like we can buy potatoes. And Congress, under the leadership of Chairman Pepper and Pickles and Proxmire, passed the bill unanimously, not one opposing vote. Now, the list of 600 prescription drugs prepared by Dr. Wolf and the Health Research Group founded by Ralph Nader is found in Exhibits 3 and 4, which are attached to my testimony. You will note that it includes millions of prescriptions filled every year, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. I totaled it up just roughly, and it's about $1 billion.
Mr. Miller, if you'll excuse me for a second.
You bet.
This aging committee has had a hearing on pills that don't work. Today we'd like to hear about Quackery, and I'd appreciate it if you would respond to some of the testimony we had this morning or finish with your prepared statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have had a hearing. I want to make that clear for the record. There has been a hearing, you stated earlier, and a lot of your testimony, I think, is dealing with pills that don't work, and this committee has had a hearing on that.
So that's checked off. It doesn't appear anymore in any reports.
That's not on this report, sir.
It's very obvious that it is not, Mr. Chairman, and I think it's a gross omission. If you've had a hearing, what would have been wrong with referring to the hearing that you had and make a reference to it? I frankly think it's a gross omission, and I will say nothing more about
Thank you.
Bills that don't work, Mr. Chairman. Then, Mr. Chairman, I would like to draw your attention to my 2 letters in my testimony asking for more information about these hearings and the Quackery investigation being conducted by members of your subcommittee staff. And I might like to state here that this is not in any way, I hope, unfairly critical of the staff. I cannot express how fairly and how patiently and how cooperative both the minority and the majority staff have been. They have been excellent. I am just very upset about the way that this report was brought out, by the refusal of the committee or of the chairman, because we addressed this letter to the chairman, 2 of them, way back in November, asking some very simple questions about this report. Because if you'll remember, way back last November, Donald Robinson wrote an article in Parade magazine that appeared in major newspapers across the country. In this article, it referred to the investigation that was taken by the staff and postal inspectors. But we had just taken on the postal inspection, the Postal Service, and had won a major victory over their attempt to be able to invade every home and business in this country without a search warrant, and had persuaded Congress to drop that section from the bill that's been referred to today. And so we were very touchy about the way the Postal Service carried on their investigations. We were very touchy about the fact that the Postal Service had just banned a health book, and we had a list of over 20 health books that the Postal Service had banned. And the reason for them banning the book, Mr. Chairman, was, get this, that the statements in the book did not meet the consensus of medical opinion. Now, this book was banned from the mails, not in Russia, here in the United States. So when we found postal inspectors were working together with your staff, we asked some logical questions. The first question, which I'm sure that you would ask if you were in my position, is the National Health Federation one of the quack organizations? And I would like to ask you that now, Mr. Chairman. Are we?
This is role reversal, but I'm not here to answer your questions. I was hopeful to be able to ask you some. If you have testimony you'd like to give, we're most happy to receive it.
Yes. We were told that the answers to these letters would be forthcoming when the report would be published. To date, none of the questions in the letters have been answered by your staff.
Mr. Miller, the report is as complete as can get, and I think that's the only answer you're going to get. If I may, let me go to some questions now. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add, sir, briefly? We're running a little bit behind.
You're the chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions I'd like to ask, but perhaps it may be easier and more interesting to ask Dr. Herbert if he would like to comment on anything that Mr. Miller has stated today.
Mr. Miller, as is typical for his organization, defends the promotion of quackery by saying that there are things which physicians do, and his outfit often refers to me as a spokesman for the AMA, which is sort of silly since I'm not a member of the AMA, never have been. That's another story. And because I'm largely in academic medicine, I teach, do patient care and research. What he does is he says, don't worry about the murders committed by promoters of quackery, cyanide poisoning from Laetrile promoted by National Health Federation, deaths from chelation therapy, which is promoted by National Health Federation. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Worry about unnecessary surgery. Unnecessary surgery is a separate subject. It is a real problem. It is a separate problem. But surgeons don't place national ads. They don't have a National Health Federation promoting, go to Dr. X for this. The National Health Federation says, go to X and Y in their ads. They tell you to go down to Tijuana for Laetrile. I mean, the husband of the president of the National Health Federation has a criminal conviction for conspiracy to smuggle Laetrile into the United States. I mean, we're talking about national promotions in newspapers and magazines of quackery. And as I say, some surgeons do unnecessary surgery, and they should be stopped, those who do. But even those who do don't take out national ads, and they don't have a national organization promoting going to them.
Yeah, I would like to add, I guess, again, once more for the record, that this committee has had extensive hearings in the past on unnecessary surgery. Dr. Herbert, there was one other question that I had for you. How large a problem is what one witness this morning called quacketeering, or organized quackery, and what can be done to control it?
I think it adds up to about $25 billion a year, and I think the only way to control it is to have a branch of the Federal Organized Crime Task Force deal with it under the RICO Act, which allows jailing of promoters who engage in conspiracies to promote racketeering and quackery. As Chairman Pepper noted this morning, he said, quote, these people are gangsters, unquote.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Swartz, would you like to comment on anything?
Well, I'd like to, I wish Mr. Miller had addressed his question about whether I think the Federation is quackery. I certainly think it doesn't, because the Federation is not involved in any surgery as far as I know, and his definition of quackery are surgeons who do unnecessary surgery. However, he would like to expand that definition to deal with the promotion of worthless remedies. I'd be more than happy to respond affirmatively to the fact that, yes, I think it is a quackery organization.
Thank you very much. Mr. Miller, if I could ask you to briefly respond to anything that these gentlemen have said, would you care to do so?
Well, let's take the size of quackery. I have 4 figures here that I've heard. Mr. Herbert just said there's 25 billion.
Refer to me as doctor. You're Mr. I'm doctor. I worked hard for that doctor. It's Mr. Miller.
Excuse me, Victor, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And I'm professor.
Okay. Victor referred to $25 billion as his estimate of the amount of quackery there is. Mr. Horowitz this morning said there's $100 billion. He said it was 10 times higher than the 10 billion. Mr. Pepper has given us 2 figures, $50 billion in November of '83 in the congressional record, and $10 billion on this report. Now, Mr. Chairman, figures have a wonderful way of being exact, and you can also find the kind of problem you're dealing with. Maybe these people see quackery that we don't see. I would like to see in the committee report a documentation of the $10 billion. Or I did appreciate Victor's attempt this morning to outline so many $1 billion for each of the quackeries that he sees. But I would like to know why quackery for Mr. Pepper dropped from $50 billion to $10 billion in 6 months. At that rate, in 6 more months, we won't have any problem. Now, I would like to see, number one, the amount of quackery that is the dollar sign on moon dust. And incidentally, I was improperly quoted in the USA Today. I did say that the purpose of this hearing was to put moon dust in people's eyes and draw them away from the real problem. Now, people who deal with figures are upset with this flippant way in which the committee throws billions of dollars around. Is it $100 billion? Is it $50 billion? Is it $25 billion? Is it $10 billion? The only way to solve that is to have some documentation. How much quackery is there from eating raw human glands, for example? As far as the defense of Laetrile, I proudly stand on my record with Laetrile. It is true that Laetrile is legal in this country today, and any person in the country can get Laetrile at this moment, in part, due to the effort that I've had to keep it legal, and I hope it will be legal as long as I live. Now let's go into Laetrile. Mr. Chairman, do you know that the only 2 legislators in all this debate, and this debate has been raging now for the 22 years I've been in Washington, only 2 legislators in the whole United States ever had what I call as the statesmanship when they heard this controversy to say, let's go look. And these 2 legislators called me when I was in Washington, in our main headquarters in Monrovia, California. They said, you've got a bill coming up in Nevada now to legalize Laetrile in Nevada. Could you let us see one of the clinics down in Mexico? Well, I'd never even been to the clinic. I'd been defending them for 15 years without ever having been into this clinic, and I said I'd be glad to. I'd like to see the clinic myself. 2 Nevada senators of opposite political parties flew down to San Diego after the workday. I took them over to the clinic, Clinical Del Mar, no, it was the Seidel Clinic.
Mr. Miller, in the sake of time, could I ask you to wrap up your statement, please? And anything you would like to submit for the record will certainly be appreciated, but we are running pretty much behind.
May I finish this story?
I'd like to ask you to proceed.
Okay, on Laetrile. The one senator said, I only want to ask these people one question. Now, in the Clinica Seidel, the cancer patient is allowed to go in and live with their family, not like in a hospital where they pay $600 a day, $30 a day, and the family was in there. The senator from Nevada said to the first room when he went in, he said, have you taken Laetrile? In every case, the answer was affirmative. The next question was, were you in pain when you came into the clinic? In every single case, the answer was affirmative. The third question is, are you in less pain, or are you taking less painkillers than when you came in? And 8 out of the first 10 people he talked to said they were in less pain or out of pain because they had taken Laetrile. This senator, at the end of 10, I said, do you want to keep going? He says, I've got enough. I'll stake my political career on the fact that Laetrile is effective in the treatment of pain in cancer patients. Now, what people like Victor Herbert do is to set up straw men about Laetrile, and then they knock them down. Laetrile has never been promoted as a cancer cure, to my knowledge, but it has been promoted as a help and an aid in the treatment and prevention of cancer.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Miller grossly misrepresents reality. Laetrile is 6% cyanide. By weight, the first thing it does is destroy the nervous system by knocking out cytochrome oxidase. Patients feel less pain because their nerves have been destroyed by this poison, which gradually makes them blind and deaf and kills them. And murders from Laetrile are recorded with the coroner's reports in my book, Nutrition Cultism, which I'm sure Mr. Miller has read in depth, and also my book, Vitamins and Health Foods, which Mr. Miller reminded me refers to him in person.
I carry them wherever I go.
I thought you would.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. I would appreciate our fourth panel.
Mr. Chairman.
On state and federal enforcement officials.
Could I have one more second? Just one more second.
Go ahead, Mr. Martin.
We have here a challenge to Dr. Dr. Herbert. To Dr. Herbert to debate Dr.